Thanks for joining today's session. We're going to talk about NotificationFX, which is a component that we include along with PhoneView Enterprise Edition. It's the way we've kind of structured it. It's like a standalone capability as well, and you can actually get it independently if that's all that you need potentially. So really just going to give you a rundown of what it's about and some demonstrations, etc. And keen to get questions where possible. If anything that I'm describing is of interest, great, and tell us more about what we're doing right. Equally, if there's anything that we're missing, which is probably quite a few things, because we've not tried to make this as feature complete as some of the top tier products out there that do this, but we are trying to make it flexible. So I'm pretty sure even if we can't accommodate everything that you're looking for today, it would be really good to get your feedback and see what we can add in. So just kind of quick rundown of the agenda. So we'll just cover some house rules, just the usual stuff. Also the usual kind of little bit of background information about UnifiedFX. Then in terms of NotificationFX, I'll give you a general overview of it. And then we'll talk about the requirements of the software and how to set it up. And then some basic functionality, which show you how to do it. So that's like creating and sending messages. So I've got a few slides on that. And then one of the key things about the way we built the platform, and I might elaborate on this quite a bit, unfortunately, it might turn a few people off because it's kind of developer centric. So what I'll maybe try to do is keep that kind of more technical or more developer centric content near the end as much as possible, other than the slides, obviously. But what I want to describe to you is how we've built the platform that makes it really easy to integrate with other applications. So this is something that's there. We don't really enable it by default, something that we'll probably aim to maybe enable once we get to 7.0 of PhoneView as public release, which is aimed for January. So maybe around about that time frame, we might start to unlock this, make it generally available, this application integration component that NotificationFX has. And the two real things about that application integration is got two directions of travel. So you've got inbound, which is inbound to phones. So that's from an external application, literally of any system of any type, can send messages to Cisco phones individually en masse using filters and things like that, which we'll cover. And conversely, you can do the exact same thing in reverse. From a Cisco phone, you can initiate messages to be sent to external applications and systems, basically trigger them from some interactions on our phone. And the way we've designed that is as flexible as we could think of, and which sometimes makes a little bit of a challenge because that makes it less obvious how to do things, but it's quite deliberate to keep it that flexible. We'll run into a little bit of a demo, a little bit of conclusion, and kind of generally keep questions to the end. The usual kind of house rules are primarily just the session's recorded. You can email sales@unifiedfx.com for any details. If you do have any questions, please submit them with a Q&A panel. Then make sure you mark all panelists. I've got Mohammed on the session with me today, so I can't talk and type at the same time. So he's my right-hand man to help out with that. In terms of UnifiedFX, a few people might have seen this before, so I apologise. But it's quite handy just to recap for anybody that's new to us. But we've got three main products. We've got PhoneView, which is very powerful endpoint management, or kind of flagship product, the original thing that I created. And ultimately, this is now being used to manage literally millions of Cisco phones, like 3.5 million phones last time we checked a few months back, I think. So a nice juicy number there. And oops, press the wee button. And what you're about to see in terms of NotificationFX, we also bundle with PhoneView as well for the Enterprise Edition. So it's a nice kind of synergy that way. We also have a wallboard application, which is for Cisco's contact center, the UCCX platform only at the moment. We do have plans to extend that maybe next year. But the way we put that together was very deliberately nice and simple to install. Just install it yourself and upgrade it yourself, etc. Nice and easily. And it's 100% browser based with zero dependencies. So there's no plugins or anything like that. We've also, the way we integrate it with UCCX and the way we feed it back to the browser, you just can't get any faster kind of technically. So we put a lot of effort how we architected that. And then finally, we have MigrationFX, which is on a few of the Cisco kind of programs. In particular, it's on what's called the Migration Incentive Program, and that allows us to get you a copy of that software for free, courtesy of Cisco, if you trade in 100 or more Cisco phones, old Cisco phones, or competitive trade-in, like old Avaya phones or something like that, if you're swapping over and buying some new Cisco phones. But you have to do it specifically as part of the MIP program. You can't get the free copy any other way. It's Cisco's program, so they obviously implement it and enforce it. You can't buy it obviously directly from us or from the GPL too. One recent news item is we're quite pleased we managed to get the patent through for the actual raw mechanism, and that's how the what do you call it again, the actual phone swap part happens. So when you swap an old phone for a new phone, so if you're bored, if you want to read a lot of jargon, have a look up that patent and see what's in there. Thankfully, I didn't have to write it, just had to work with the patent lawyer, so he did all the hard work. But it's just pleased we finally got that through. So anyway, that's a quick rundown of what we have. And PhoneView and MigrationFX are Cisco compatible. OverView is not yet compatible, but we've submitted it a few months back, and it's just at that final stage. We're hoping that we're going to get that compatibility badge in the next week or two. That'll be a nice little triple play there when we get that done. Okay, so an overview of NotificationFX. The key premise for it is it's just nice and simple text and audio messaging to Cisco phones. So if you want to send a message to or from a Cisco phone, we'll try to cater for this in a nice, easy way to implement and use. It also includes live paging to phones as well as IP speakers. The way we do the live paging is multicast audio, same way most other systems do that. So obviously it's dependent on a multicast enabled network. For flexibility, we've designed it so it can send from multiple sources. So you can use an XML service on your IP phone, which I'll hopefully show you. You can initiate it nice and easily from a web browser. So the right-hand graphic there, that's showing you what the web page looks like, and all the kind of fields you can leverage there to create a message that you can then send. And part of the application integration component is we also have underneath the hood a REST API which incorporates webhooks that allows that inbound outbound integration with external applications. So we'll get a little bit more detail on that in a couple of weeks' time. I think it's the 19th of December. We've got some integration work we've done with a company called Quasi, which I think is a really nice example of taking advantage of that capability. The destinations, the phones that you send the message to, they're dynamic. So you define filter criteria such as device pool, location, region. So that's nice. So you don't have to statically assign particular MAC addresses and maintain all that, which is obviously a hassle. So again, it's that simplicity angle that we're playing against. And an important thing is it uses the same code base that's used inside PhoneView that allows us to do things such as delete, literally 50,000 ITL files, all that CTI and queuing and throttling, etc. That has been implemented in PhoneView is the raw mechanic that we use to push out those messages. So scale is not an option. Scale's not an option. Scale is not a problem from that point of view. In terms of the software requirements, NotificationFX requires Communication Manager 8.0 above, which I think most people generally nowadays can cover that. It is best to install it on a 64-bit machine for a couple of reasons. So that's a recommendation. You probably could technically install it on 32-bit, but we generally recommend 64. It works on desktop and server-based versions of Windows, starting from 7 up to 10. Windows Server from 2008 R2 all the way up to the latest 2016. It's based on the .NET framework, so that needs to be installed. However, it's included in most recent versions of Windows and most patches, etc. In terms of CPU spec, that's actually a little bit higher than you really need, to be honest, because it doesn't have to have all that heavy load. But just if you're going to run NotificationFX, it's quite common you might have other parts of our products on the same box as well, so we can overspec that a little bit. An important point from a technical point of view, and this was quite a lot of work, to be honest, to get this to implemented well, is it supports full multi-cluster integration, including mixed communication manager versions, which is no small feat. And what that effectively means with is we have multiple CTI integrations simultaneously. So if you have 3 clusters, and even if they're different versions, we can communicate with all of those simultaneously via CTI. You don't have to have separate boxes, separate drivers, or anything like that. We take care of everything in terms of separate processes, and you just basically configure it and it all works. In terms of the actual configuration and setup, it's both, again, put some effort into making that as easy as possible. You basically, when you go and add a cluster, and when you do that, there's a setup button you can use. This is a kind of relatively new thing we added this year. And when you do that, it'll ask for a one-time user account, right? So this is a setup user, as we call it. That's that kind of second screenshot. And that user account requires AXL API access, basically database access to your call manager permission level. And what it will then do, if you go through the automatic setup approach, is it will create a user account for you, and it will automatically set all the permissions and things on that kind of service account, effectively that AutomationFX user, and just take care of everything for you in one nice simple step. Alternatively, you can go the manual approach and create a user account yourself, and put the username and password in, so you're not forced to get our software to create the account. If you've got rules and policies against that, you can just create yourself, and all the information with the permissions is in the product as well. Something that Mohammed actually added and sneaked it out there, which was just a nice bonus, was this one last bullet point, which is one-click provision of the XML service. So hopefully if I get time, I'll show you that in action. But basically, it's a nice little button. You just click it, you choose the cluster, you give it, I can use the defaults obviously, but you give it the service name and anything else you need to modify, and it will generate the actual XML service that you can then get the phones to subscribe to. So again, one less step for you to do on Communication Manager, and we can kind of set that up for you. In terms of the way the software works, I like to think of it as 2 components. Maybe it's 3 actually, I was talking about it. You've got messages and filters, right? But really, when it comes to the messages side of it, you've actually got messages, notifications, and filters, right? Let's ignore filters for now. We're going to talk about that in a little second. But messages are effectively an instance of a notification that you're going to send, right? So once you actually send a message, from our terminology, that becomes a notification. So it's a transient entity as such, which is then distributed to whichever destination. So it's kind of like a copy of the message and particular attributes at that point in time, which is then kind of broadcast out to those devices. So the message component therefore is quite important, because that's the starting point. That's your source of what you're going to send out to the phones. Now, I'll show you this in the demo, but it's really nice and simple. All you do is go to the messages page. So there's a kind of easy menu option to find that. When you're on that, you click a little new button. See that little new button in the top right corner? That'll be visible in the top corner of the page. And when you click that new button, you then see this message form. That's the top right hand picture. And in that picture, you can see there's a few fields in there. So that allows you to set a text message. There's different components to that. There's a title, a prompt, the main body of the message. You can have a callback number specified. That'll add an extra soft key onto the phone. So if they press that button, it'll dial that number. So it's a nice way to give some simple feedback from the people that are receiving the message. You've got a timeout. You can get the message to disappear automatically after a certain number of seconds. The audio component is quite flexible. You can, whatever audio you choose, you can actually have it repeat in a certain interval and stuff like that. The different types of audio sources is you can choose an audio source from the actual TFTP server. So if you've got audio uploaded already, or you want to upload and host on the Communication Manager server itself, you can pick that. It's got a nice little drop-down list where you can choose the appropriate file that's on the server. You can upload your own file. We will then store that on the AutomationFX platform and host it from there when the phone requests it. And my favorite, which is again another feature that Mohammed put in there, is text to speech. When you choose that option, it will dynamically convert that text that's in the message box there into a temporary audio file that becomes part of that notification instance I was talking about. And then it tells all those phones that are the destination to play that audio instance that's there. So you can literally just type in a different message, or edit that message text rather, and then send it again in a new audio file will be dynamically created from that text-to-speech mechanism. You can do live paging. If you do live paging, then there has to be a transmitter. So that'll be, if you're using the actual phone service itself, it'll be that phone becomes the source. If you initiate it from the web page, you can actually search for a phone in there. So that could be your own desk phone, and then it'll automatically initiate on that phone on your desk and start transmitting to whatever destination it is. If you have a wireless handset, the 7920 or 8821, all that kind of series, then they can make it vibrate too. Obviously, only those phones support vibrate. Now, once you've populated that or edited that, etc., you just simply click save to just store it. If you want to, you can also send immediately. The little arrow there in that send will then expose a drop-down list of destinations. So destinations, in our case, are what we call filters. So a filter is a kind of platform level component. And what we have is NotificationFX technically runs on our AutomationFX platform. So it's like a feature on that platform. And there's a lot of shared components in AutomationFX that our different products can take advantage of. And filters is one of them. And the way that filters work is it takes a lot of key data from all the phones that are on your cluster or clusters, summarizes them for you, makes them available, and it's nice, easy to understand kind of tree summary, including numbers which indicate the quantities there. So it's not expanded in this screenshot, but if you had device pool expanded, you could see all the different device pools on your environment. You'd see how many phones against each of them, and then you just click a tick box against it and save that as a filter by typing into that little box at the top the name you want to give it, hit enter, click the little save icon. I'll show you that in the demo, and that allows you to create a filter with that criteria. You can obviously modify the filter criteria and then hit the little save icon to update it. So it's really straightforward. You can have as many filters as you want and use them any way that you wish, but the key point is they're dynamic, so they're evaluated at the point of use. Now, when it comes to sending messages, as I've maybe touched on already, and this is a kind of graphic just to kind of show it visually, you can send from multiple sources. So just a quick description. On the left-hand side, we have a REST API, and I'll hopefully show you a little bit of that in the demo. So we have a interactive REST API part of the platform, and that allows you to query and update, CRUD operations on those messages. So if you want to, instead of from a user interface creating messages and sending messages, etc., you can create, update, and send all those messages programmatically or from external system. You probably wouldn't really be too bothered about creating and deleting messages programmatically, but you would probably be interested in sending them. And any message you create in the user interface is available to you from the API. That little box in red there, that's showing you, for example, the URL that we'd use. So in this case, just to show you the construct of it, this is a HTTP post operation, and you'll be posting to that URL, and you can see inside it, it has the name of the message. So this, for example, is a code blue message, and we're sending it, and the filter is basically the destination or the filter we're using for its destination. So in this case, we've obviously got a filter called Office for particular Office phones, and obviously only sent to one phone because that was just a simple demo in the lab to make that screenshot. So anyways, REST API. The phone service, I'll try and show that to you, but it's just a nice simple XML service and easy to navigate, a couple of simple choices anybody can use, and you can preset some of those choices. And the web interface, again, it's simple. It shows you all the messages in a nice table. You can actually directly edit them in that table as well. Some key criteria, you can turn parts of the message on and off, and you can send immediately from there using that little send drop down, and the drop down will list all the filters basically in the interface. You can also, when you're editing or creating a new message, you can actually send it immediately as well. So nice and flexible again. Now, this is me going to go into the kind of developer stroke integration side of it. So I do apologize if it's maybe not everybody's cup of tea. What we are planning to do over time is make this less developer centric. So it will still be there for developers to use, but try and have some nice kind of wrappers in front of it. But that's it's going to take a bit of time to figure out a nice way to do that. But the raw mechanics are there. So it's like an open platform, and basically anything you can do in the user interface, you can automate, which is the whole point of the AutomationFX platform that we've built. We can automate things that you do against UCM. So in this case, when it comes to NotificationFX, now tagging this as beta because it's there, we actually hide it at the moment. If someone wants to try it out, they can just let us know and we can unlock it for them. But it's something that we're still finalizing, the data model and the URLs and things like that are still subject to change right now, but mechanically it works really well. So it is, as I maybe mentioned a minute ago, it's an interactive REST API. So that means that from a GUI perspective, you can actually send requests of various kinds, get requests, post requests, delete requests, and all that kind of stuff. So it's quite a bit of a verbose kind of interface, quite a lot of model and textual detail to maybe navigate, to take a little bit to get used to. But it's all there available to you. So the whole platform is interactive from a modification perspective. The REST API itself is really orientated in two ways. There's one part which is meant for managing messages, so creating the CRUD operations, create the message, delete the message, update the message, etc., and sending them. So that's the kind of message-centric side of it, for creating and sending. The other side of it is effectively what we use for the opposite direction. So that's kind of outbound, as we are terming it, and that's where we use webhooks. So webhooks are, they've been around for quite a while, obviously, but they're certainly quite common and popular nowadays in terms of how to give two-way communication with a web service, because a lot of the web is really, you make a request and you get a response. So if you want to find out about something from a far-end system, you have to poll for it, typically refresh it, which isn't very efficient or timely. A webhook, from an API point of view, solves that problem, because effectively on your side, your application side, you have a URL that sits there and is ready to receive a data payload. And what it will do is you get the URL for that reception point on your side, your application side, and you create a webhook, and that webhook has the URL to send that data payload to. And that means that as soon as something happens, it can immediately send that payload to your webhook reception point in your application, and then do something if it wants to. So it means there's no delay, there's no polling, so it's very efficient, etc. Now, what I'll hopefully get to do is show you some webhooks in action. And the reason why I'm kind of going through some of this stuff and why we've made it available is nowadays you don't even need to be a developer to develop in a lot of occasions, right? Is this whole kind of, well, there's different kind of terms around it. One term, which isn't quite the right context I'm talking about right now, is serverless. And that's kind of where you've got an application and you don't really care about the infrastructure it's running on, but there's a lot of synergy between kind of serverless concepts and some of the stuff I'm going to show you. Now, one of my favorite platforms is one called Zapier, which I'm going to mention in a little second, but there's a few of them about there. And what they can actually do is allow application to application integration. They're kind of like a middleman. So you can actually get our NotificationFX integration to Zapier, and then get Zapier to integrate with one of hundreds of other systems, right? And that means that, and it works in either direction. So if you wanted to, you could have an email coming into Zapier, which you pick out from a particular inbox, filter for certain criteria, certain words or subjects, etc. And if it matches, it can then go away and send a message to some phones, for example. And you can do the exact same thing in reverse using the webhook side of it. You can have Zapier set up, you can create a webhook on our platform, and then whenever a notification is sent from a phone, the webhook is triggered, that goes to Zapier, and then Zapier can take that data and information that's from that message and send it anywhere, send a text message, send an email, etc. So it works both ways. That's the kind of concept. Now, to talk about the inbound, outbound in a little bit more detail, if you're sending messages to phones, so that's the inbound direction, we've kind of termed this, then using the application integration side of it, what you're really doing is you want to post data to the relevant endpoint on the AutomationFX platform with whatever message information you want to send, or tell it which message you want to send, etc., like that URL there. But there's lots of different ways you can do that. Now, if you're on premise, so if your application or system or whatever it is that's talking to our AutomationFX platform is on premise, then great, nice and simple. Point it to the URL and you're away. But the reality is, most applications are web centric, or there'll be web components to it. So you really, cloud-based solutions and stuff like that. So we put a lot of effort into this other part, which we call CloudFX. It's not one of ours if it doesn't say FX on the end. So again, we just come up with our usual code names for projects. So CloudFX is effectively the cloud enablement of our APIs that we expose on AutomationFX. So a subset of those APIs is the ones that we use for NotificationFX. So that's the obviously for sending and receiving messages. And what effectively you can do, and that diagram might be a little bit complicated and technical, but if you see that little kind of green square there, that's your AutomationFX platform that NotificationFX is running on top of, and that's all configured and integrated with your on-premise call manager. So the kind of grey shaded area, that's your on-premise network. So you could have an on-premise app talking to it directly, obviously, but we've come up with a nice, simple and secure solution if you do have some cloud-based application. Now, what you can do, and you can always do, is you can just set up your own firewall, allow traffic inbound from there, and then tell your application to route it via your firewall address, URL, etc., and forward it in. Everybody can do that, obviously, and that's all good and fine. But just to make things a little bit more simpler and consistent, we've actually created a gateway component online, and that is hosted at api.unifiedfx.com. So when you send a request into that URL, there's ways that you can set up your AutomationFX platform to use the gateway in one of two ways. Now, either it can forward to your own firewall, and that would be what we class as a relay URL. So that can take your request from the cloud, forward it in to your own inbound firewall configuration, and then that obviously comes in to AutomationFX via that route. By doing that, what you can do is you can set up your firewall rules to only allow traffic inbound from our gateway address or addresses. So that means that you've got a very tight control over that inbound traffic. So that makes it extra secure. What our gateway does is quite a neat trick, is it takes the authentication mechanism, which is API keys technically, so just like tokens effectively. It takes those authentication tokens, it basically hashes them, keeps a copy in the cloud, so we don't know what your token is, but we know how to identify it. And then when a request comes in from to the gateway from externally, it can then check if that token exists, check if it's valid, and also route down to the appropriate instance, because obviously we allow for multiple different customers with different AutomationFX instances. So that's one way in. What we've also built is another component which is called CloudFX Relay. And what this allows you to do is skip the firewall component completely, because for simplicity, for testing, for setting it up and all that kind of good stuff, we'd like to eliminate external dependencies as much as possible, and this is what this allows. And what happens is if you use the CloudFX Relay, there's a little kind of switch to turn it on and off, which is nice and handy. If you use that, then what our system does is it creates an outbound connection to this relay service that we have. And when it's turned on, then when a particular request comes in that it's got that token that's unique to your particular instance, it will route it via the relay and down through your connection without any firewall configuration in your environment, because it's using an outbound connection that it maintains to that relay. So it means that you've got a nice secure path that only allows valid requests with valid authentication, encrypted, etc., to be routed down onto your network. But it's all your choice. It's not on by default or anything like that. You have to turn it on and set it up, etc. But deliberately, it's just a couple of mouse clicks. So maybe a more detail I want to go into, but just for those people that are maybe interested, that's how we can take requests inbound. So that could be a help desk platform that when someone gets a ticket, you could route the request down to a group of agents or a particular, contact service, group of individuals, a hunt group or something like that that's relevant to that, and they can be alerted on their phone, because there's lots of people that I get so many emails or don't look at the email every now and again. It's just another channel to annoy people on if it's something that makes your life easier for a particular business use case. The opposite direction, which is outbound from phones. So this is effectively where from the XML service, not just the XML service, but it's really the use case we're thinking about, is I can send a message, and that message normally goes to some IP phones, right? That can certainly do that, or you can skip the IP phone component and leverage just the cloud component if you wanted to, or the application component rather. So if you wanted to, you could have a particular thing like triggering a fire alarm or something like that. That could be a part of the XML service, some emergency scenario. You press that button. That would then trigger a webhook, which you'd obviously have to set up. And that webhook could be tied in with an on-premise application, obviously, but just, as we've got some examples and it's easy to set up, you could do it with a cloud service. So Zapier is the one I'm going to show you. And then that could send an outbound notification via any channel that you want, email or SMS. So that's quite a nice one, because that means that from any user's phone that you want to set up by minor interaction, even just a single button press if you want to, that can then initiate any kind of external world notification or interaction that you could imagine. So I mean, a fire alarm button is obviously quite a good example of something like that. So there's all these kind of flexible choices you've got. That's deliberately what we're trying to keep open here. So keen to see what kind of ideas people have for how to use this capability. All right, we're on to demo time. So bear with me a little second and I'll flip over to my demo system. Okay, so you should be able to see my computer screen. I've got a couple of things running, and what we've got about 25 minutes technically, so I'll try to keep this under about 15 minutes if I can, but I have to get carried away sometimes. Now, I'm just going to talk you through what you're seeing. So this is the AutomationFX web interface, and as I described, NotificationFX is a kind of component that runs on here. So we can see on the left-hand side, I've got quite a lot of things enabled on this particular instance, obviously. I've got lots of all my features turned on, but there's a couple of things I want to describe. So the main one for NotificationFX is this messages menu. So when I click on that, I get this messages page here. And within this page, this is a straight table with all your messages that you can use. If I go down a little bit, on this panel on the left, I've also got filters. Now, I've got a couple of filters that I've created. So if I click on that, it'll basically load that up. If I expand it, you can see that's 7941. I flip to that one, you can see that one's got the 8861 ticked on it. If I want to create one, just for the sake of it, I'll create one for the 7961. What was it? So it's registered. So do that. Go in here, we'll call it nice original reg. 7961, enter, save. So hopefully we've created that correctly. So you can load, save, change, edit, and delete. The little icon there, that gives you the filter name. You can actually give it a description as well, and obviously you can delete it from there too. And that little send button here, this list here is the same as this list there. So as add, remove, that's all synced up. Now, so this is our phone destinations, and I've highlighted before, this is dynamic. So you would probably wouldn't really base it on models, to be honest. You'd probably base it on things like region or maybe device pool. So let's show you some device pool. So therefore I've got most of our phones just in that default one, big Glasgow, New York, and whatever kind of locations you've grouped your phones together. So if you want to create a filter for all the phones that are in New York, let's just do that whilst we're chatting. It's that status, just to show you. that's registered, so you can work with offline phones to a degree, at least the platform can. Let's ignore the model selection. Let's go up and let's choose New York. Oops, it is it. If I can click properly. And let's go in here and do reg dash New York. Always get that capital E in there. Enter, save, and then we see reg New York. Now, another way to kind of visualize this, and this is just part of the platform, is if I go to the phones page here, this is like a core component to the platform. So this would be available to you as well. And if I flip my filter, so to speak, like so, you can see that dynamically the list of phones changes and I can search within that. So if you want to be kind of a bit more sure about what you're doing when you're editing and changing these filters, the phones page is actually a better place to play around with it, because as you go and change and edit your filters, you can see the actual devices that are included in that filter that you've chosen. So if I flip over to 8861s, for example, you look at the modem column, you can see they're all 8861s, etc. Let me go back to messages. Now, creating a message, as you can see, there's this little new button at the top here. So let's click new. It's going to leave the kind of defaults here, do the old standard hello world. We'll turn audio on and we'll do text to speech and we'll hit save. So we can see there's message one, says hello world. Now I can actually click inside this little thing here, hello world, again, enter, and it'll dynamically update that. I can turn features on and off like the audio component separately, and I can send from here as well if I wish to. So I've got the send button, and let's send it with 7961. So I click that little button. Now, a couple of phones nearby, I've just made some noise. You probably won't be able to hear them. And then it's got the confirmation down there that it's sent that message. So that's me creating and sending from the web interface. Now, let me just show you what that looks like when it arrives on some phones. So if I can get my browser sessions sorted here. Yeah, maybe just change my layout in phone view this. So as some people may recognize, this is phone view I've got open on the left hand side here. I'm going to use this so you can see a couple of phones we're going to send messages to and show you how those appear on the phone. So you don't have to have phone view. This is just me using it for demonstration purposes. And what I'm going to do is just turn off a couple of bits of the interface to give it a bit more space to see what's happening. In fact, I'll take that log off as well. There we are. So we're just looking at phone screens now effectively. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Got some cats. Oh, got a little fire alarm there we were testing earlier. Didn't really want to show you that yet. Leave that for a little surprise. But let me go back. So, excuse me. On that messages list then, I've got my code red, which is what I want to send. And if I go to the send option here, there's my destination. So if I want to send it to the 8861 model types, which is how I've kind of grouped this, not very realistic, but just helps me for a technical point of view. So I do reg 8861s, that could be a particular building somewhere or whatever. Then you can see on the left-hand side, get a nice alert here. This is a new mechanism that we've just added to the platform. We've not made it public yet, where we can now do images and text together. This is something we should have available, general availability for January, but we've got it in the platform. And you can see a nice example there. So that gives you a nice clear visual indication that there's a fire alarm happening and some text information. Now, what I might just try is sending that again and see if I can get you to hear a little bit of it with the text to speech. Let me go next to this.
Fire alarm. Please leave the building via the nearest exit in an orderly manner.
So I don't know if that was very clear. You might just had a little bit of it, but that was the text-to-speech component. Obviously, you could just pre-record your own, maybe a bit clearer than the built-in text-to-speech mechanism, and use that instead. But a nice way to push that out. Now, that's me initiating it from the web interface, obviously. I'm going to show you how to do it from a phone as well. Now, for doing it on a phone, the kind of best thing to do is to have an XML service. So let me show you how that gets set up. Let me just get rid of that one there. Now, if I open up our communication managers, oh no, what am I talking about? I do want to do that too, actually, but I'm going to do it from AutomationFX. So let me just log into our call manager. There's a good chance it might not work from Chrome on this machine, but we'll find out in a second. Oh no, my goodness, all right. So if I go to device settings, phone services, just going to prove that it creates it. I've obviously got some services in here, but I'm just going to filter it to the name I'm about to use. So I hit find on there, if I've typed it properly. So there are no services right now with the word NotificationFX in it. If I go back to here, I would click this little provision XML service button. Then we can push that out and set up the service for us. So we'll use the default name, but add -demo onto it. It auto-populates this for you. It figures out the URL that you're supposed to use, but in case there's anything wrong, multiple IP addresses or host names you want to use, you can modify that. This is the cluster it's going to set it on because the whole platform is multi-cluster capable. And these are some settings you might want to think about whether or not you want it as an enterprise subscription, and obviously initially have it disabled, etc. So just leave the defaults here. And when I click create, it's going to set that up on Call Manager for us. And if I go back to here and I hit find, as if by magic, there we are, UnifiedFX notification service. Obviously, that's something you only really need to do once, but at least it kind of takes care of it for you. And one of the reasons why we've got it in there is makes life easy for you, great, but it also sets up some parameters. So it saves us having to, do a good job in documenting it or explaining it. You just need to hit that button and and set these parameters up as well. Now, the way the XML service works is technically there are 3 pages on this XML service by default. There is the first page asks you which message you want to send. The second page asks you the destination or the filter. And then the third page asks to confirm before it sends it. Okay. Now you can choose a choice for each of those 3 pages. Okay. So if you do a parameter when you subscribe to this service, and the message parameter is set to the name of the message to send, then it won't ask the user because that choice has been made when this service was subscribed to. Same thing with the filter. If you tell it the filter, it won't ask that question. It'll use the one that you've set. And same thing with confirmation. You can turn that on and off. So therefore, if you want to, you can skip the confirmation. So if you use all 3, that means that a single button press or initiation of that service subscription will immediately send a notification. So therefore, you have the scope to create a panic button effectively on the phone too. So again, flexibility. It might just be a case of you want to confirm, but maybe you want to choose the destination and only allow them to choose the message. So therefore, maybe there's 4 or 5 messages that they might use. But it's always the same people because it might be that phone for that security person in that building. So their destination's always the same building that they're physically in. They can't send it to some other office, another campus somewhere. Hence why I've designed it that way. Now that I've got that service on the system, let's go to one of the phones I've got in front of me here, and we'll just set this up on it. So I just need to. My machine is a bit slow for some reason. Hopefully it's not gonna drop me out here. I don't know what's happening. Yeah, I think I've got a remote desktop session over to one of my other computers and it does seem to be a bit slow. Sorry about that. 10166 enter. Right, so I have a phone. This is in front of me. I'm going to show you in a little second. I go into its device configuration, and then what I'm going to do is subscribe to that NotificationFX service. So for anybody who's done that before, if you're familiar with the admin interface and call manager, it's just up this drop down list, subscribe, unsubscribe services. We click go, get this little form, bunch of services. There's our newly created NotificationFX demo. We click next to subscribe to it. That's those parameters we're talking about. So you can fill them in here if you want to. If you leave them alone, all 3 pages will be presented to the user. So this is like an override option. So we just hit subscribe and save and close. Now I can hopefully see, oh no, it's not set on the phone yet. So if I now that I've subscribed to that service, I can now add it to a button on the phone. Now, before I do that, let me just show you the phone. I should have it open here somewhere. Yep, here it's here. Let me move that to the left. So on the left-hand side, I've got an instance of our PhoneFX product running, and this is just remotely controlling a single phone, which is the phone in front of my desk. So I can either do it physically in front of me or do it remotely using PhoneFX, but so you can see what I can see basically on that phone screen in a bit more detail. Now you can see it's just one line button on there right now, but if I go to the button 2 here and I do add new service URL, so because I've got that NotificationFX demo service, I can give it a different label on the actual phone button. I'll just leave it as NotificationFX, hit save and close. You can see the page reloading. And if we wait a couple of seconds, we should see the phone resetting. Yep, phone is registering, and we can see that newly added NotificationFX service. So, okay, great. We have a service for sending messages. Now, what I'm going to do is minimize this and put this to the right-hand side. So think of it this way. The right-hand side, I have a user in front of a phone, and I've got a newly created service, XML service. On the left-hand side, I've got a bunch of phones, and they're going to be the destination effectively. So to initiate that, in this case, I can just press the second button down on the phone. That opens up the list of messages first. So let's do plus notice item 3 there, that's that one that we created, that hello world. Let's use that one, might as well. So if I choose number 3, we've chosen message 1, and then the destination, now most of them are 7941, so we'll use that filter. So that's item 4 here. And then it's basically, now it's saying 10 devices because that's 10 configured on the system. They're not all online right now, but that's telling us the maximum number of devices it's going to go to. So it's a little kind of confirmation page first. So we say yes to that. And then you can see on the left-hand side, where PhoneView showing us some of the lab phones there that have received that message, and it's got that little kind of whole world again thing. Now, I don't think this auto clears the way I'd set this message up, so let me just manually get rid of them for now. Okay, and then we can come out of the service. Now the message has been sent. I'm not going to go into that XML service anymore. That hope for anybody that's familiar with how XML services work, I'm sure you could kind of take that quite a lot further. But this part of the demo, really, that's the kind of standard out of the box, using an XML service, using a web interface to send messages. The next little part of the demo I want to take you through is on the application integration side of it. Now, I've actually got 2 kind of demos. One of them I didn't have time to do, and it was probably a bit long anyway to fit it all in. So I'll get an old version of it that we did a while back. I've got a video of it, which I'll share the link once late in the next 10 minutes or so. But what I want to do, mostly for educational purposes, is just show you how to integrate our platform with something like Zapier, for example. Now, I've already set it all up, so it's not going to show you it from scratch. It would take a wee bit of time. But I just want to show you the general kind of parts and how you would use them. And for a little bit of fun, if you want to join in, let's see if I can show this to you. There's actually, you can see the actual data live as I push it out. Now, if you bear with me a little second, I'm just going to clear some of this out so I can have a fresh starting point. Okay, I've done that. And I just want to send this URL here, I think. Yep. And chat like so. Now, for anybody who's interested, if you want to open up the webhook.site URL that I've just pasted into the chat window, you can join along. And what you would see is the same thing that I'm showing on my screen right now. I'm going to make this a little bit wider. So there's a kind of sidebar that appears. Now, I think I deleted those requests just to kind of give us a fresh start. Let me just reload that to see if I did purge them out. And no big deal if it doesn't work for you. This is just me playing around just to show you some of the mechanics. And this is one of these kind of helpful tools you get online that allow you to inspect webhooks and see how they work. Oh, that's not a good sign, is it? I think that's that website rather than my end, right enough. Let me just check. I don't know why. It definitely seems to be a bit of a network issue in the office today. I wonder if I can get that from there. Yeah, I think my virtual machine's acting up a little bit right now. So I've maybe got another way I can show this to you. Oh no, there we go. It's just me being a bit impatient possibly. So what you're seeing here is a website which maintains a relatively live feed of webhook data that gets posted to it. So I cleared that out. Oh, excellent. Looks like someone's playing around with it already. Maybe this was me when I was trying to connect it. Now, if you're going to play with this, one of the little tick boxes that's handy is this little thing called format JSON. So the data payloads that we send and work with, receive, etc., is usually always JSON based. It's quite a nice, easy format to understand. Human readable, etc. So if you tick that little format JSON, then the stuff that we're going to push out, and you should hopefully see. Now, what happens is I've previously set this webhook up, so that kind of URL that's on that page there, I've set that up on our platform. And the way that I did that was on here. Now, on our AutomationFX platform, this is a bit that's still hidden right now, it's this beta component. You can create apps, which are really just authentication tokens for each application to use. And then it's all self-documented in terms of this docs component, and that's what you're looking at right now. And when I scroll up and down in this window, I've got quite a lot open right now, so it's quite a busy page. There's some extra stuff in here that we're not exposed. It's not relevant to NotificationFX. You wouldn't really see normally, but the whole platform's under here. But messages are listed, and this is a get request. And you can see here, get all messages, and it'll get all the messages in JSON XML format. There's some sample data there. When I hit try it out on our platform, then it gives you all the raw data for the messages that you've created, the same data you'd see in user interface, right? So that's the programmatic variant of it. And if I work my way down, there's lots of things in here, editing messages and stuff like that, right? I'm not too worried about showing you that message side of it. I want to show you the webhook, which it's there down the bottom. So if I open up webhooks, and if we do get webhooks, that lists all the webhooks on the system, or at least got a couple I've set up previously. This is so laggy, it's really annoying. I click try it out, open up, and yeah, there it's there. See that box there? So that there is the URL that matches inside here, okay? And what that means is whenever a message event happens, it will post the payload with all the data relating to that message to that URL for whatever application is listening on it. And in this case, this webhook tester will be able to show us all the content of it in a little second. And that's, in this case, for any message that we send on the system. What we also have, and I've got it turned off right now, is another destination for those webhooks, which is on the Zapier platform. So whilst I'm kind of in here, let me show you that other webhook. So that's one webhook, which is going to this test site. So simultaneously, it will also send the webhook to Zapier, and that's our Zapier hook. You can't really browse to that. That wouldn't really work for you. That's just an internal unique URL that was generated for us against this Zap on the Zapier platform. And for anybody that's interested in this kind of stuff, really have a look at it. Now, conscious of time, as always, I get carried away with my demos. So what I'll maybe just do is show you in action quickly rather than going into too much detail about how it works. And if there's still people about or interested in any questions, I'll maybe return to this, after I've kind of wrapped up. So effectively what we have here is a Zap. I'm going to turn it on, and then I'm going to open up my WebEx Teams client. I can't be bothered finding it. I didn't actually have it set up on this computer, so let me just ignore that step, maybe show you if anybody else is interested later. What that's going to do is going to catch that hook. So that's the URL that we set up. So that will receive the data payload, the same one you're going to see in a little second when I send it. And in this case, what it does is it sends a message to WebEx Teams, and there's a nice templating mechanism in here. So it extracts the data. So you see some samples there from one I tested earlier. So code blue, carrot rest in progress, the person that sent the extension number and the device pool that they sent it from, the location they sent it from. And I can go in there, I can type in text, I can pull in fields from the sample data, etc. So nice and user friendly as these things can be from a development point of view. So you don't actually need to write any code to integrate with NotificationFX. That's the kind of main point of what I'm trying to highlight here. And I might do a follow-up session just on this kind of stuff at some other point if there's any kind of interest in it in particular. But let me show you an actual request happening then. So I've got the webhook tester page open. I've got the phone with the notification service on it. We'll open up the service. Let's do code red, like so. And we're going to push it to the 8861 this time. So I'm going to show you what it looks like, just in case it wasn't clear last time. Please confirm, yes. So it's pushed out that code red. It's told us it's sent successfully. If I briefly flip to here, in case you didn't see it earlier, there's the little icon and stuff that I've set up on that particular message. And if we go back to here, we can now see there's a post entry. So that was that webhook being triggered. Because I've got format JSON ticked, it's got it nice and pretty for me to read here. And if I scroll down, you can see here's the payload. So there's a code red, the fire alarm, the type of audio that it was doing, the URL to play from. Obviously that's internal to the network, but you could technically download that audio if you wanted to. The URL that would display on the image that would display on the phone, and some details about who received it, the filter, and in particular the person that sent it. So not very interesting because I've used the default device pool name, but that would be the building or location that the message was sent from. This would be the extension that sent it, and this would be the user. Now this raw data is effectively, we can cherry pick any part of it we want and build a message that we send, in this case to WebEx Teams, but that could be any destination, quite literally email, SMS, all that kind of stuff. And as I say, it's pretty much all drag and drop. So it might be a little bit to understand that to kind of start with, but say if anybody's interested in this, I'll be really keen to kind of spend a bit more time on it in another session. So I think I've done with that part of the demo, so I'm getting ready to wrap up. A little bit over time, I'm afraid, sorry about that, but let me wrap up and jump back on to the questions at the end. So let me share PowerPoint again. Always struggle changing between computers. Okay. Share PowerPoint. Okay. Now, the next demo, which I'm not going to do for you, but just got for reference, was how to do that kind of integration in reverse, where you have a text message in WebEx Teams sent via Zapier, sent via AutomationFX and CloudFX technically, and then landing on a bunch of Cisco phones. So it's something we actually did quite a long time ago, so it's quite an old video actually, but it's not really something that we kind of publicized too much, to be honest. And what I'm trying to find out here, it's here. I'm just going to post that video URL for you. So that's the YouTube link. So just take a note of that. Don't need to watch it right now, obviously, just for your reference if you're interested at some point. So it goes into a bit more detail about how to set up Zapier and stuff like that. But it is the opposite direction to the one I demonstrated a minute ago. So in conclusion, we like giving stuff away for free. So you can get NotificationFX for free as well. And what we've done is we've limited it to 3,000 phones. Now that's across any number of clusters as you want, but it will stop once you hit that number of configured devices. There's no capacity limits, so you can send a message to all 3,000 phones if that matters to you. You can do all that, no problem. There are some feature limits though to that free version, so you would have to buy a license, either get it with OverView Enterprise Edition or buy it standalone. The link down the page there, the products NotificationFX. You can actually go to that NotificationFX, tell you about it, and I think that page will give you the link to the free software. And if you want to buy it, you can kind of look at the prices and buy it online too. Obviously, we're price competitive because we're keeping simple and flexible. The paid features, which I've also demonstrated to you, are the ability to send pre-recorded audio and text-to-speech. So the one that you can get for free excludes those particular capabilities. And obviously, if you want to go above 3,000 phones, you need to buy a license. But the key point is you can take it, use it, play with it. You might even find some production use for it, even at the free level. So just starting to wrap up.